Welcome to Mona Tutorials. In this session we're going to be looking at player property volumes, or PPVs. First we're going to look at some examples of PPVs, and then we're going to look into setting up one of your own. So let's have a look. I have 4 examples of PPVs that I've set up. Some of these have reactors as well, just to add a little bit of flavor, I guess you could say. So in the case of this one, we have a big volume inside the jumping castle. So when you jump higher than the usual amount, which is there. I've added 4 quadrants using reactor in the space, so when it hits, it will bounce a little bit using blend shapes with a blender. I won't be looking into that today, just looking at the volumes. So that's one example of adding a jump height. The next one here, we have another reactor, but with a PPV. This one affects the chromatic aberration as well. So as soon as you jump, it will let you jump very high. So this is a mix of reactor and PPVs. So we can look at how to do that one. Here we have a small volume above the fan. So when I jump in it, it goes higher, like so. This is a sort of a negative or a positive gravity situation. So as soon as I touch it, I will get thrown in the air, like so. And then the last one is I can control my walking speed. So I can basically force it into a run, and I can also super run. So you've got that. Unfortunately, we can't really choose the direction. It works in both directions. But if you're doing a racetrack or something like that, someone's probably not going to use the other direction. So that should be fine. So those are some examples of PPV. I'm sure you can come up with some other good ones as well. Now, let's look at setting one up. So we have our examples here, and I'll do a quick flip through all of these to show the settings for each. Now, generally, I will create an empty game object, put the player properties volume, which can be found in template scripts, player properties volume, on it, and then I will add a box collider. So here you can see the light green here. Now note that the gizmo sometimes gets a little bit off depending on what the parent scale is and things like that. So sometimes that's not the most accurate. So keep that in mind when using that as a guide. Let's have a look. So the gravity is the same. Everything is -1. If it is set to -1, then it has no impact on the settings in the space. But in this case, I've basically doubled the jump height. Now, if you want to see the default, you can roll over each of these things. So for example, the normal jump height is 6.5. So I've nearly doubled that. Gravity is -15. Walk speed is 2.7. Sprint speed is 10. Chromatic aberration, bloom, and motion blur will be kept as whatever the space is set at by the user. So when I jump in that and I press jump, I will jump twice the height. Now, just as an aside, basically each quadrant has a reactor, and that will play an animation which creates this. So each one will bounce between these. Next one, let's go to the jump pad, which was created by Alv, so thanks for that. The jump pad, once again, has another empty object. It has a box collider, it has a player properties volume, and they've added the reactor to this as well, because those 2 volumes are the same. So when you touch it, it will play the animation, which will be sort of like a compress, and then when you let go, it goes back to normal. And in this case, the jump height is a little bit much higher than double, so about 3 times, I guess. Everything else is pretty much the same, so these could actually be -1 if need be. The fan is an interesting one. Now note that the gravity on this one is 100. Now, in this case, to make it when you land on it and it pushes you away, this basically has to be like 100 or more. If it is less, I've found that you will land on the fan and it doesn't push you up automatically. So as soon as you jump, it will fly up, but it won't just keep you above. So 100 seems to be the sweet spot for that. Override gravity is on because gravity can be positive and negative. So you could actually set -1 as a gravity. So if you want to override it rather than turning things off, then you would use this. And of course the box collider. Now this is quite small, so it depends on how high you want to throw the avatar. The last one is the booster. So once again, we have an empty object with a box collider with a player property volume. In this case, I've added the walk speed to the run speed. So basically you have to run, and then the sprint speed, when you hold shift, will go to 25. So you go super fast. And I've also added a lot of motion blur. Now, perhaps chromatic aberration might be a good way to do that as well. So it depends on what kind of flavor you want to add to your speed boosts. So those are the ones we've done. Now let's create a new one. So I'm going to create an empty game object. Let's just call that test. Now, generally speaking, when I'm using a sort of ecosystem of something, I will put everything inside an empty game object just so I can move things around later easily. So I'll do that. I'm going to add a cube. I'm going to squish the cube just so we know where the PPV is going to be. I'm going to add another game object. Now notice how this is 0, 0, 0, but it is at the center of the parent game object, which is placed. So that is why I will use an empty game object so I can move everything together. So usually I will make something very easy so I can see what the PPV is, or the reactor. I'll put an R. We're going to add a box collider. It does accept other types, such as box, mesh, or sphere. So you can use if you want to, but generally I will use a box because it's a little bit more performant and sort of easy to work with. So I've got that. What are we going to do with this one? Well, let's find out. So we're going to add... So you can drag and drop player properties volume onto the object, or you can just type in the start and then add it that way. Let's add jump height. Now, of course, you can do whatever you like with these. So let's do jump height to 20. And I'm going to add some chromatic aberration, about 1, and see how that goes. So just check that. Cube. Collision, yep. And there we go. Now, as this is an object, I can move all of these as one object, which is much better for organization. So let's test in the playground. So we have our objects here. This is an excellent example, because I always forget to do this, is make sure that your object, the PPV, is a trigger, for example. So make sure that this is set. Very, very important. Otherwise, you cannot walk into your collider. So let's try again. There we go. So we have our chromatic aberration. And then if I jump, it will be very high. And as soon as you walk out, it goes back to normal. I think that would be a better example. Yeah, I'm going to set them to aberration as well. So there are some good examples of PPV, and adding reactor just to add a little bit of flavor on top of those. You can get some fantastic results, and I look forward to seeing what everyone comes up with. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and happy building!